For our second video segment for the Psychrometry lab session, we're going to take a quick look at the data sheet. This is something that you should receive by email in PDF format. The sheet that you will receive has the data already filled in here, but I just wanted you to see what the blank one looked like. Fairly basic data grid such as we've been using throughout the semester. And if you are able to print this out as we go along this, I think it'll help you to look at a physical copy. And in addition, if you're able to print out the schematic, which is the second page of the handout. I mentioned that in the first video segment, but it really makes it a lot less confusing if you can go along with an actual copy of it. On the data sheet, our first column on the left side is the test case number, 1 through 6. The second column indicates what the conditions are of each test. So we have the base case, that's just air flowing through the unit. We're not doing anything to it. Second case, test number 2, is the electric preheaters only. For test number 3, we turn off the preheaters and turn on the steam boiler, and we leave that on for the rest of the lab session. Test number 4 is steam injection and cooling through the refrigeration unit. Test number 5 is steam with cooling, and then the electrical reheaters are switched on. And then for test number 6, we have the same conditions as for the last test, only with recirculation. So we're adding heat and moisture to the air and largely recirculating it through the unit. Then again, as we discussed in the first video segment, we have a total of 10 temperature readings for each test number, A through E, and for each of those we have a dry bulb and a wet bulb. And the location of those test stations is shown on the schematic, which I'll show you on the next page briefly. But again, we're just turning that dial. We're collecting the temperatures and recording them here. So it goes pretty quickly. This lab session does as far as taking the data. You just have to wait a long time for all the temperatures to reach equilibrium after you change something. The lab write-up is detailed in this last paragraph here. And for tests 2 through 6, we would like you to locate and plot the wet bulb and dry bulb temperatures for the stations A through E on the attached psychrometric charts. So use one chart for each test. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's 5. I think we included 6 charts in case you have a problem, but of course it's easy to print a blank one. For each point, please find the apparent specific humidity, which is the moisture content by weight, the relative humidity, and the sigma heat. And then for test number 6 only, also find the apparent specific volume and the vapor pressure for each point. We'll go over some of those lines on the psychrometric chart in a minute. And then finally, for each test, describe the physical processes occurring in between the stations and comment on the results. So for that, you'll again refer to the schematic on the following page for the location of the measuring stations, and then you can just discuss why things change or don't change so much in between the readings. Again, here is the schematic for the unit, as we saw in the first video, and then also we'll go over this in some of the subsequent videos. And again, if you can print this out, that would be very helpful. Here is the intake at the upper right-hand side. Air flows past station A, wet bulb, dry bulb, travels downward through a mixer, past station B, through another mixer, past the preheater, which is controllable, past the boiler, which is controllable. Then we have station C. Then we go through the evaporator of the refrigeration cycle, which is controllable, another mixer, and then at station D, again, we have wet bulb, dry bulb. We go past the reheater. Here is the fan, so then the air flows upward past station E, and then out through the damper into the lab. So for most of the tests, we're just going in through the intake. We go one pass through the unit, and then out through the damper. Then for test number 6, we actually partially close the damper so that we're recirculating the air. And again, we're still adding steam through the injector, and we're adding heat through the reheater. We're also cooling through the evaporator. So there's kind of a lot going on in that last test. Here is a blank data sheet, and hopefully this is review for you. I believe that Professor Kosis went over this in a couple of lectures with you already. Just to review, so this is specific to our atmospheric pressure here in Reno, about 85 kilopascals. At sea level, it's 101.3 kilopascals. On this chart, just ignore this outer band of numbers. We are not using those, okay? And that is the enthalpy of the moist mixture. The way that you find a point on the chart is you'll find the dry bulb temperature along the bottom, and these are lines that go up mostly vertically, like so. You can see they're at a little bit of an angle here, but just line up. So here's 0, 0, 20, 20, etc. So that's dry bulb. And then the wet bulb temperatures are diagonally from upper left to lower right. And you can look at those with temperatures here. And once again, these are all in degrees Celsius. And then once you have a point, you can find the other information that's requested. So sigma heat is actually a direct function of the wet bulb temperature, so those lines are parallel to the wet bulb lines. Relative humidity is kind of parabolic. Apparent specific humidity is these lines across here. Okay, and that's the moisture content, so grams per kilogram. And then finally, the vapor pressure of the water in the air is on the right scale here, and that's kilopascals. So that should be enough to find all of the points, all of the information that's been requested. Just have a couple of quick examples from previous classes, and you can't really see these very well. I just want to show you, don't put an awful lot of time in here. You're going to have a lot of points overlapping, but once we start turning on and off heaters and boilers and coolers and so forth, you should see pretty dramatic differences between some of the stations, and it's most important to plot those and discuss what's going on. So that's actually reheat. I should have shown that last. Here is humidifying only. Okay, so A and B were very close, and then we inject the steam and get a big increase in wet bulb temperature, but also dry bulb temperature. And then finally we have, this says cooling, but it is also cooling with the steam injection, okay? So that's all we really want you to do in the analysis, is plot the points and discuss what's going on in between the stations. And as always, please contact any of us if you have any questions. It's really not that abstract. It's a lot of busy work, but it is important for you to understand this. Okay, let's go take some readings.